Greetings, YouTube. Today I'm going to talk about the book, The Crossroads region for the Mutant Epoch tabletop adventure role-playing game, and this is touted as Gazetteer number 1. If this is the first Gazetteer, we are looking forward to a lot of things coming from Outland Arts and written by Mr. William McAuslin, because this is a monstrously large book. So, first up, I received this as a free review copy. I want to be above board. Secondly, this is a huge book. I did not read every single word in this book, but I did read the first, I don't know how much, can't remember how the heck my bookmark is. Oh yeah, it's about the first third of the book, word for word, and then I did an overview of the rest. So I have a very solid idea of what's in the book and what the book is going to present to you, the potential buyer. Now, I've spoken about the Mutant Epoch role-playing game in the past, and I was impressed with the game itself, and I've been impressed with all of the different supplements that the game has been put out so far. And I will get up to the table of contents in a minute. By the way, it has a functional table of contents and a functional index, so that is a big bonus to me, because I really happen to despise books that don't have those things. There's a timeline in the book. There's a nice selection of NPCs in the back. But for me, the strong point of this are the maps. And that's just a map. This book is full of really good maps. So, what do you get? Well, you get a nice selection of illustrations, and the illustrations are very evocative, to me at least, of the Gamma World editions up through the 1992 edition. So I feel that they're completely appropriate for a game that has a very similar vibe, in my opinion. Though this is a darker game. So the table of contents covers things like Part 1, which is the introduction, how to use this book. Part 2 is home settlement determination. Now, the home settlement determination is quite interesting. This book covers a section of the California coast, and it covers the north, east, and west of an area. It doesn't cover the southern area. Why doesn't it cover the southern area? It doesn't cover the southern area because that is the area that the GM, or rather the writer of the book, has left open for the GM. So you can put your settlement, if you don't want to use one of the settlements here, as your home base. So that way you have an entire section of the map to stick any kind of a settlement you want. And in the event you don't want to use it, say you just want to use a settlement here because you just don't feel like creating your own, below that section could be used by you in the future in any way you want to. Say it's an area completely covered by, you know, dangerous mechs or plagued by Fallout-style ghouls. A no man's land where, you know, people very rarely go, that kind of thing. Or there's an area where people just go in and no one comes out and no one knows why. So there's a lot of options in here, but I really like the fact that he left the part of the map empty, which is useful. I know that sometimes I've had to stick things, campaign settlements, into unusual places, establish campaigns, because there wasn't a lot of space on the map. And I had to kind of stick them on the real edges, so I'd have a space that wasn't being used by some other, you know, content creator officially from the company at hand. Part 3, we have the Northern Freeholds, which gives you 3 different regions, all with some very nice detail. Now, one of the things I like about this is that every single one of the regions discussed in this is laid out in the same manner. So we have a section here, it says Overpass. Then we have a little blurb, just a bunch of data points like faction, who controls it, the government, the population. Then we have site details. We have construction of the city itself, or the settlement itself. Then we have water and sanitation, technology, dangers, law enforcement, military, and defense, which is a complete breakdown of the type of troops you're likely to find there that are being put forth by the settlement itself. Visitors to Overpass, what you will expect as a visitor. A brief history, social details, resources and industries, accommodations, and of course there are also things like, you know, useful charts and such in the book, which to help you with along these ways. For example, there's a whole section here dealing with different kinds of pubs and taverns you would find in Overpass itself. Then we get into for the Excavator, which is the adventuring party. What the adventuring party would be a find of use or of interest to them. For the Game Master, so that speaks directly to the user of this product itself. We all have in the back there is a section of generic random encounters that you might have, and then you get into the unique overpass encounters, and each section has its own unique encounters, and I'll get to those in a moment. And there is one here that's Pitford, and Pitford is given a thumbnail description the same size as all the other ones in here, and they vary from settlement to settlement. But there's an entire Pitford supplement. If you'd like more details on Pitford, you can purchase that particular book, and I've reviewed that myself here. If you'd like to go watch what I had to say about that. Then we have the lower freeholds, which is 4 settlements. The Dominion of Aberitia, which is a mutant supremacist group. I'm not thrilled with racially based groups. To me, they're always the bad guys. So, and I've never really understood why mutants would be as separatists as, say, like the pure stocks, because mutants have to be inclusive because mutants are so varied as it is. So I've never understood why they would be exclusive in that regard. It just seems kind of weird. But there are, 7 or 8 different settlements in that area. The Holy Purist Empire, which I think there are 12 or 13 different settlements in that area. Then we have Part 7, Independent Settlements, which there are 7. Nomadic Communities, for communities that are on the go. Part 9, Heroes, Outlaws, and Organizations. Part 10, The Ruins, which is 4 different types of ruins. So if you want something that's a little more generic and you just want to tack your own, or put your own unique flair on something, it gives you at least something to work from. Then we have Points of Interest, which is Part 11, which is a column and a half of entries. A column and a half of different points of interest. And the points of interest could be anywhere from 2 paragraphs up to 6 or 8 paragraphs, and all of them are just going to be full of ideas for adventure seeds. Then we have Appendices, street documents, determinations, and tables, barroom patrons, determination tables, slaves in the Crossroad regions, radio stations, online resource lists, which gives you a place you can log in and get some information from this company, and of course a map section, which is just the maps freed from their connection chapters. Every chapter has a map of the settlement. In the back they have all the maps in one place if you'd like to just use the maps. Then they have a section about non-player characters, historical timeline, index, and a greeting. So there's a lot of information in here. It's really quite astounding. And for me, the high point are the maps and the unique encounters. Now, there are hundreds of unique encounters in this book. And that's not an exaggeration. Every single settlement could get 24 of them, both daytime and nighttime. And at least one of the settlements has an entire subterranean area, so that subterranean area has an entire section of unique encounters as well. And some of the unique encounters are things like people looking to hire their adventurers. Some of them are more interaction with the population. It could be street urchins, beggars, thieves, sex workers, that kind of thing. And a good number of them are encounters with potentially dangerous individuals, often raiders and thugs and things like that. And a lot of those encounters are a little bit more deadly than I personally would run them. This entire campaign is taken kind of Road Warrior to 11 for the level of deadliness. It's like every encounter can be very dangerous. I like to have my encounters more like a 5 or a 6. I like there to be a baseline from which you can then have really positive events, which are below that baseline of danger. Then you have really horrible things which are above that. But I think you need that baseline. And I think that this may be just a little bit higher than my tastes run. But that's up to the GM. The GM can just say, okay, instead of 12 bandits, there's 6 bandits. You can get the idea. But a lot of these encounters, if they do not go well for the player characters, you're going to end up in one of three things. 1, you'll be lucky if the player characters just get robbed blind. 2, there's the possibility they get enslaved. And 3, they could very well end up dead. So I would look at this and gauge it for your group, how deadly you want to go, and do you want to involve as much slavery as the game does entail. For my tastes, I consider slavery to be one of the great moral abominations in the world, and I think it should be played down a little more, make it rare, make it more rare, so that it is considered more horrifying. much the way a horror film, there are downbeats where nothing is taking place, so the terror moments hit you harder. You get my point. Now, one of the things that I really loved about these unique encounters here is that they are extremely generic. Now, I don't know if that was Mr. McCausland's intent or not. Let me give you an example here. Okay, so it's like, a PC notices 1 die 3+ rough-looking men, armed fellows, sitting in a corner, who keep watching them as well as anyone new who enters the bar. And it says these men are bounty hunters who, if we recognize any PCs, won't let on, but instead, one will leave the bar and come back in X number of minutes with a gang of additional people with clubs who are then going to try to make an arrest. Now, the beautiful thing about this passage, and almost all of the passage here are this generic, is that any GM running any post-apocalyptic game can use these encounters. You know what a bounty hunter is in your game. And a lot of the times they'll say a gang of thugs, and 6 of them have minor mutations. You know what minor mutation means in your game. Yes, that has an actual meaning in the core rules of the Mutant F-Bot. Okay, you can go look it up. And when the entry says treat them as raiders, there are a specific raider entry in the core rules that you can go look up. But you know what a minor mutation is in your campaign is. You know what a raider is in your campaign. Now, let's face it, most minor mutations, you could ignore them for a street encounter. Afterwards you can say, okay, you notice this guy this, or some just little flavor in there, but they're not mutations that are going to have a major effect on that encounter. But if it says the gang leader has a major mutation, that will. So you may want to quickly figure out what that major mutation is, or have a list next to you of pertinent things. For example, mutations that would make sense for a gang leader to have. Because if a gang leader has the ability to heal, that may not make them a gang leader. That makes them a support character. But if they've got things like flaming hands or a big huge claw, that not only might help them become a gang leader, but would be pertinent to an encounter with said gang leader. So all of the unique encounters in this book are like that, written in a very generic tone. Occasionally the book does refer to specific creatures like a Skullock, which is a type of humanoid branch off of the human species, or a specific monster. But again, if you don't run this game, you could still just replace it with any monster that you want. Okay, talking about a flying encounter, I can throw a flying encounter in there. So I'm not sure if Mr. McCausland intended to make this as generic as he did, but he made a product that could be used by any game system that runs a post-apocalyptic setting. Any at all. Now, yes, ideally, I would recommend the Mutant F-Bot. Not only is it good, but it's supported, which is also nice. For example, my favorite version of Gamma World, the 1992 edition, while great, in a game I would turn to in a heartbeat, is no longer supported. It's a big disadvantage over a game that is being supported. And it's not having good content like this created for it. And I'll give you a little blurb in the back here to give you an idea what you're getting in here. 33 community descriptions, 98 locations of interest, 320 illustrations, 39 maps, 19 NPCs, plus deep details on regional factions, ruin areas, outlaws, heroes, organizations, nomadic communities, and much more. And it talks about being able to download a lot of this information from their site, which is also useful for the GM, because it means you don't have to try to wedge your book into a copy machine. I don't know if I can recommend this enough. Like I said, it's a little violent. A lot of the encounters are on the sexist side, because it is a hard world if you're a woman. So those are kind of the caveats I will give you. It's adult content in that regard. But it is good. And any of the things that I've mentioned that I consider moderately questionable could be easily stripped out without any thought whatsoever. I could make the modifications I want to do on this on the fly. I wouldn't have to write a single note. So, there's no effort going to be taking place on the part of the GM who wants to use this and I don't want my counters quite as deadly. Like I said, you just cut the number of thugs in half or something like that. You don't want slavery to be as prevalent. You just say it happens less often, or it's underground and things like that. Or it's only allowed in certain regions, that kind of thing. For example, I would make the purists the bad guys in the game, because I always make the purists the bad guys in the game, because I despise racism and bigotry in real life. And so I would have slavery be rampant there and not very common anyplace else. But that's just me. Everyone's going to run it differently. For example, you could, if you want to, you could run a campaign set purely in the pure stock, the region, and run yourself a Warhammer 40,000K style campaign when you're out there to cleanse the world of the mutant scourge. Not what I want to run, but you could do it, and this book gives you everything you wanted to use if that is your vibe. So, like I said, this is an excellent product. I'm really happy it's in my collection, and I'm glad I have it as a resource. I think it's a valuable resource to everyone in the post-apocalyptic role-playing community, because we can use this for any system. Though, again, I would recommend you checking out the Mutant Epochs game if you have not yet. I have a review of it here on my channel if you'd like to go look it up. As I did a breakdown of a character development I did for it too as well. And a review of all the products that they have put out since. So, again, this is an excellent product. It's top-notch. It's full of so many useful things. The encounters in this, folks, will save the GM so much effort. Even if you just wanted to use this book as a random collection of encounters, that's it. Just a random collection of encounters. It's going to be worth your time and money. And I think it's worth your time and money just for the maps. So there's a lot of value here. So, I look forward to comments below, and I hope that some people will take the time and effort to go out and get a copy of this, because I think that you're really going to enjoy it.